Any others? Go ahead and put your phone up. Number 3, you could do a couple different ways. One algebraically, one graphically. I'll do the algebraic way, but if you want to see the graphic way, I'll for that. So to test this algebraically, I could put this in for x and y. So y would be 4 is greater than 1/2 times 2 minus 5. And see, does this work? Is it true or is it false? So this would be 4 is greater than 1 minus 5. And 4 is greater than -4. Is this true? Yes. So because this is true, this would be a solution. If it were false, then no. Did anyone want to see it graphically? Yes. On your calculator, I'm going to go into apps. I have a bunch more apps in here too, but find equals. And then go into y equals. I have stuff in here that I'm going to figure out. And then if you hover over the equals, you can change the sign to greater than by hitting alpha trace. How to get that back over here. I don't know where it is. There we go. What was the equation? Yeah. Greater than. You have to use parentheses, 1 divided by 2, x, what was the last one? Minus 1. Sorry, I can't hear. Minus 5. And then if I graph this, I'm not in the right window. Zoom 6. Then I could think about my point, which I already forgot what it was, 2, 4, and look at where that is. 2, 4 would be somewhere in here. That's in the solution area, so that would be a solution. Oh, thank you so much. Questions on that? And then number 4. Alright, so this one you are distributing and combining the terms, trying to get x by itself. So we have 32x minus 16 minus x plus 10 equals 15x plus 10. Combine your like terms, do exactly what it says. 32 minus x, so 31x. Negative 16 plus 10, so minus 6. Then you can pick and choose what you want to move and solve. You have a pass. Come in. Let's say I subtracted 15, and if you want to do this at the same time, add 6. I think that's 16. questions on that one? So today we're going to do the fourth part of factoring, where we get into, when you think of factoring, this is usually what you see, but the other parts are also factoring. So if you didn't put your phone away before, it needs to be away now. I saw that as I was pressing on paper. You just throw it away. Caleb.
It's a bracelet.
Okay. So with this, you have to think about this like a kind of like a puzzle. The pieces have to fit in order for it to work. Sure. But there are specific rules we have to follow for this type of factoring. The rule is up here. I'm going to talk through it, and then we're going to actually see what that means. So trinomial, there are 3 terms now. Previously we were dealing with binomials, the 2 terms with GCF and difference of squares, and then 4 terms, just polynomials, multiple, with the grouping. So trinomials, 3 terms. You have to find 2 numbers that multiply BC. That also add up or subtract. That's a plus or a minus. So as we're thinking about that, they have to apply to both. If they only apply to one, it doesn't work. So let's try this for number 1. Let's first just think about the factors of 12, because we know it has to multiply to be 12. So what times what would give us 12?
6 and 2.
6 and 2.
1 and 3.
1 and 3. 4 and 3. Is that what you said?
1 and 12.
1 and 12. Okay. So now of these factors, of the pair of factors, which of these, if I added them together, will give us 7? 4 and 3. So they have to both multiply to be 12 and add to be 7. So when you have those numbers, you're going to have 2 factors. Whatever variable you have, that's going to be your variable first in both. If these were positive, if these are both positive, these are both going to be positive. And you just put those numbers in. If you want to check your answer, you can distribute like we've been doing, and you should get that trinomial from before. Do we have questions on that one before we continue? Okay, let's do another one where we're adding. For number 2, we need factors of 20. So give me numbers that multiply to be 20.
5 and 4.
5 and 4. 1 and 20, 2 and 10. That's it. Okay. Of those, if I were to add 2 of them together, which ones would give me 9?
5 and 4.
5 and 4. So then in my 2 factors, I'm going to have n plus 5 and 4. It doesn't matter if you put 5 first or 4 first. Let's do another plus before we move on, and then we'll keep going. So let's jump to number 5. So factors of 5. What times what gives us 5?
1 and 5.
1 and 5, that's it. So it means these have to be the numbers that add to be 6, which if we add them together, how would I write those 2 factors?
K plus.
K plus 1, K plus 5. Okay. Between 3, 4, and 6, do we want to see any of those 3 before we move on to what we're not designing? So then let's look at number 7. Same process, but it's a little different because of that negative. So disregard the negative for a second. Still find two numbers that multiply to be 18.
9 and 2.
9 and 2.
18 and 1.
18 and 1.
6 and 3.
6 and 3. I think that's it. This 4 wouldn't work. 5 wouldn't work. Then because it's negative, in order to multiply and get a negative, one of them has to be negative. So we have to think about if I were to make one of these negative and I added or subtracted them together, would I get this 3? Which one would be negative? So positive 6 minus 3 would give us that negative 3. So just like before, except now we have to use that negative, so it would be n plus 6 and n minus 3. There's a general rule, if rules help you. If they're both plus, both of your factors are plus. If the second number is negative, one of these have to be negative. There's something about smaller, bigger number, but we'll talk about here in a minute. Alright, let's do another one, number 8. Factors of 8.
4 and 2.
4 and 2.
8 and 1.
1 and 8, 8 and 1. If we were to make one of those negative and add or subtract them together, which one would get positive 2? 4 and 2, which one would be the negative? So then when we write those two factors, what would that look like?
X plus 4, X minus 2.
X plus 4, X minus 2. Guys, focus. Do you have any questions so far? I'll let you guys choose if we want to do any more of those 9 through 14. So let's start with 10. Let's think about the factors of 54. If you aren't sure, start dividing in your calculator. 54 divided by 2, divided by 3, by 4, by 5, keep going.
6 and 9.
6 and 9. 4, what is that? 27. What in 27? 2. 3, Does 4 work? Can you divide 54 by 4? No. What about 5 wouldn't work? What about 7? 8? So then that would be it. So then of those, which ones could we make a negative? 6 and 9. Which one would be the negative?
6.
So then our two factors would be
S minus 6.
x minus 6
S
and
plus 9.
s plus 9. So if the second one is negative, the second number is negative, one of your terms is going to be negative, and it's usually the smaller one. Yes. This one, this 3, it just has to add or subtract to that. So if I were to add these two together, I would get that. Okay, we could do 11 really quickly. So, factors of 45.
5 and 9.
5 and 9.
3 and 15.
3 and 15.
45 and 1.
45 and 1. Sometimes we forget about the itself and 1, and sometimes that's the answer, so make sure you do use that. If we were to make one of these negative, which pair?
5 and 9.
5 and 9, and which one would be the negative?
5.
So C minus 5 and C plus 1. we get back from lunch, we'll talk about the other two types.
Is that a dog bone tree?
No, dumbass.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, dumbass. It looked like a fucking bone.
Dumbass. Look back.
You called me a dumbass. What are you doing?
Okay. You guys are late. So we talked about when there's both a plus, when there's a minus at the end. Now let's do some of the ones where there's two.
So we
Two
go back
minuses.
back.
So for 15. Same process, find the factor. That would give us 63. Guys, focus. So what would give us 63? 63 and 1, yes. 7 and 9 and what else? We're doing number 15, yes. I think there's at least one more.
21.
Okay, just like the ones we were just doing, one of them have to be negative. But it is 57 and 9. But would negative 7 plus 9 give us negative 2? It would be 9. So it switches. One of them has to be negative, but now it's a big number. Guys. So b plus 7 and b minus 9. One has to be negative. The bigger number is going to be the one that is negative. Let's do another one. For number 16, what are your factors of 3?
One and 3.
Just 1 and 3. So if we were to make one of these negative, which ones would give us negative 2 when we added or subtracted?
Negative 3.
Negative 3. So a plus 1, a minus 3. Did you get this one? Yeah. Did you want to see that? Okay. But yes.
I would be.
Okay. Do we want to see 17 or 18? 18. Okay. 72, there's a lot of factors, so let's find those. What times what will give us 72? 36 times 2, is that what you just said? Okay. What did you say? 3 and 24.
8 and 9.
Any others? 6 and 12.
72 and 1.
There's a bunch. Now, of these, which pair, if I made one of them negative, when I added or subtracted them together, it would give me negative 14. Someone said it, say it louder.
18 and 4.
18 and 4. Which one would be negative? 18. So what would those two factors look like?
X plus 4.
Questions there? So when they're both positive, your factors are going to be both positive. When the last number is negative, one of them is going to be negative, one of your factors is going to be negative, the smaller number. When they're both negative, one of them is going to be negative, the bigger number is going to be the negative. And then there's one more type. Look on the back. There's not many of this type, but I do want to do at least one. 8 is 1. 7 is 1. are the ones that the last type. So if we have a positive, we have to think of, there are two different ways you can multiply to get a positive. They can both be positive or they can both be negative. If this is also negative, they're both going to be negative. So what are your factors of 8?
4 and 2.
4 and 2, and
8 and 1.
8 and 1. Which of these, if we made them either both positive or both negative, would give us negative 6? 4 and 2. We make them both negative. Y minus 4 and y minus 2. If I multiplied these two, it would give me a positive 8. And if I added or subtracted these two, I'd get negative 6. Other questions on that one? Let's try 8. Factors of 28. 4, 14 and 2.
28 and 1.
28. I think this 3 would work, 5 would work, 6 would work. Which of these, if I made them both negative, would give me negative 11? 7 and 4. So x minus 7 and x minus 4. Do we want to see 10 or 18? And then we're going to do some of the GCF ones. And then be done for today. This has multiple variables, but the process is the same. We're still looking for two numbers that would multiply to be 7. 1 and 7.
2 and 14.
So multiply to be 7, not that 7 goes into. Right? And then this, because it's negative, these would both have to be negative. So when you write your two factors, m is going to go first. And there's going to be an n with the second one. So m minus 1n plus 7n.
So could you just do n minus n? And it
Yeah.
the same.
You don't have to do one. Yes. So, yes, you're right. I don't know why I put positive. It's because this one didn't look like a negative. They were both negative. My bad. Questions on that? Okay. This next part is basically what we just did, but it's adding GCF. So in general, GCF can be found in all of our problems, all of our different factoring problems. So if we factor it out first, then we can keep going. Next class, we'll talk about how to actually factor this if it didn't have a GCF. But for now, 19, is there something we can divide each of these by?
2.
So when I divide each one by 2, what's left?
K squared
K squared
minus 4k
minus 4k minus
45.
45. Then there's nothing else we can divide from each, so no more GCF, but what we were just doing, our factoring, our trinomials, we have to look and see, can we find two numbers that multiply to be 45, negative 45, and add to be negative 4? Okay. Because it's negative 45, one of these has to be negative. Which one would it be?
9.
So it would be 9. So I didn't list all the factors here, but you are more than welcome to still do that. So then from here, keep bringing down your GCF, because if you lose that, you've lost part of the problem. And then you have k minus 9 and k plus 5. Questions so far? Any others from 20 through 24 we want to see you go over any questions about? Okay. So problem, whatever comes first is going to be your GCF. So see if we can divide 52 and 120 by 4. Yeah. So that would make 4 our GCF. And if we divide that by 4, we have w squared minus
13.
13. Use that. W minus
30.
30. Then we can look and see factors of 30.
3.
15 and 2.
15 and 2. So I'm going to write down both of these only because this problems like this, because the 30 is negative, only one of the things can be negative. So if you're making 3 and 10, but only one of them can be negative, that wouldn't give us a negative 13. But for 15 and 2, that would. W minus 15 and W plus 2. Sometimes you think you'll get the right answer because you have these two numbers, but double check it. If you were to add them together, would they give you the middle number? Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes it looks like the case, but it's not. Questions on that? Any other questions we want to see you go over? The last objective that we have to cover is probably the hardest. So next class, make sure you're paying full attention. And then we're going to be reviewing soon, quizzing and testing, quizzing on the 6th, testing on the 8th. So practice these, work on the Delta math, keep working on these notes or the other ones for the rest of the class. Anyone have any questions? If you have not taken the Unit 5 test or want to work on Unit 5 retakes, you can come to me for that.